Also the constituent who is part of this arrangement, that's ICC, the International Chamber of Commerce. So Dinesh is going to hand over the proposals that were alluded to in the previous remarks by Dr. Chandra Ambuldeniam. So we're going to invite both our guest of honor, namely the High Commissioner, as well as the Honorable State Minister of Finance, Mr. Iran Wickramaratne, to receive at the hand of the Dinesh Weerakkodi the volumes. So these are the budget proposals ceremonially presented, and also the report of the Human Capital Summit, which was conducted under the aegis of the Prime Minister some time ago. So this is to do with the competency development framework as well. So all of this has been worked on during these past 3 years, and now a comprehensive report compiled and made ready, and so handed over. In time, there will be additional remarks that will stem from you stakeholders. Those of you who are involved or interested will also be able to comment, and your remarks, your observations will also be included in an addendum, which will then finally be handed over to the state machinery. At this juncture, we would like to invite the Honorable State Minister of Finance, who is certainly no stranger to anyone here. He himself has been very involved, quite apart from serving in the legislature, has been involved at various times in change, such as e-governance, which was an aspect that he was vitally involved in with the setting up of the ICTA, for instance, and many other things as well. Let's listen to Mr. Iran Wickramaratne.
Thank you. Your Excellency, the Secretary of Australia, the Secretary of the Ministry of Education, Mr. Sunil Hettiarachchi, the Chairman of the National Human Resource Development Council, all the partners here, Chartered Institute, Gamini, the FT, NISTA, and the Chamber, Council members, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I must thank Dinesh for inviting me to be here today and to participate and to listen to the presentation, very informative presentation that Dr. Chandra Ambuldeniam made, and also for the background that the Chartered Institute President gave us right at the outset. It was also very interesting to hear the Australian High Commissioner talk about vocational training in particular, and I think we have a lot to learn from Australia. I have personally gone there just with the intention of seeing how they go about their vocational training, and actually visited some of the institutions, and there is much that we can actually learn from that experience. Again, thank you to all of those who participated in this effort, because this NHRDC effort has been, as we heard, a 3-year effort of people deliberating, giving up their time, and most people who engage in this kind of effort engage out of personal commitment and passion for it. I know this out of my personal experience and not for any other reason like remuneration. because they sincerely feel that society deserves better and that we could actually make a difference if we contribute giving our skills, our knowledge and experience in this way. Very few comments that I might just make, that some of the barriers that I see, and I'm speaking at a very high level here, are sometimes ideological struggles that Sri Lanka is still engaged in. I remember as just a probably recently passed out graduate, when President Jayawardena's government was there and a private medical college was started in Ragama, in the North Colombo area. And I look back on that experience and always tell myself, what a pity that the government of the day actually caved into the pressure and really scrapped the school. That same battle from the 1980s, more than 30 years later, is the same ideological battle that we have even today. People look at it on the surface and say, if you handle it like this, if you handle it like that, if you handle it in a different way, you know, the outcomes would be different and so forth. And we could all probably agree and disagree on that. And certainly there are rights and wrongs in it. And I'm not talking about an incident, an event, or an institution. I'm talking about the higher level issue. The issue that really what people require is a quality education. The provider of the education is very, very secondary. So it's a quality education. Parents all over the world are demanding a quality education for their children all over the world. And governments anywhere will not ever be able to meet the demand for that quality education. And therefore, we have to open the space up. You see, we have to open the space up. As a young 30-year-old working for a multinational bank, being in a chamber, and that particular luncheon, the visitor was the Minister of Education, Lalita Tulat Mudali, and there were only about 12 of us sitting around the table. I was there by accident because the head of my multinational bank was unable to go, and he said, Iran, you better go. And he talked about education. And I remember, like a young upstart, saying, Mr. Minister, can I ask you a question? I said, why don't you allow me and my friends to start a school? And he shut me down immediately and said, no way, he said. That's not the policy of our government. I look back on that. Mr. Atulat Mudali finished his lunch. He excused himself, saying he had to rush back to Parliament. He came round the table, he patted me on the shoulder. I was probably the youngest person in the group there. And he said, you know, I completely agree with you. And I stood up, I walked him to the car, and then he told me, he completely agreed with me, the system needs to be opened out. He said, if I say something in public, I would be ousted from my position, and that's why I didn't say anything in public. I wish Mr. Atulat Mudali had lived and had the opportunity of actually implementing some of the very revolutionary ideas he had, but Sri Lanka was less fortunate with his early demise. So we have ideological barriers. And the other thing are professional barriers. I speak as a professional myself, and I think we have to ask ourselves the question. And when Dr. Imbuldeniya was speaking, he alluded to the fact whether we are doctors, lawyers, engineers, bankers, accountants, whoever we might be, I think we need to take responsibility that some of the barriers in the system have actually been created by us, consciously or unconsciously. Education is the great leveler. And therefore, those of us who have had that privilege and have, as a result, occupied position in society, we got there largely because of our education. I am certainly one who benefited from the free education system in this country. My father did not attend a leading school in this country. I did. And that was purely because of the free education system, and I happened to live very close to one. Education is the great leveler. It is the opportunity. And those of us who have got there must make sure that that door is open to everyone else from wherever they might come. The problem in professionals is that often we think about our profession rather than society at large, and therefore lots of professional barriers are thrown in the way of creating a more equal society. When Dr. Embildunier put up some of those slides and the statistics that we saw, I mean, it's really shocking. You know, some of those slides are really shocking. Some of you know that information for a long time, and we have to question every single move that we do as professionals and as professional associations. Are we really creating a more educated, skilled Sri Lanka, or are we really become part of the problem and creating barriers? We live in a competitive world. Our advantage is location that has been given to us as Sri Lankans. But really, our advantage in the long run has to become human resources. We are a 21 million population, just the size of one city in Asia. And therefore, our markets will not enable us to have very high living standards. And therefore, we have to have the global markets, the South Asian markets. That's where we have to go. We cannot go there by just protecting ourselves. We have to compete. And that's something we will have to accept. That's what our forefathers accepted. That's what they did thousands of years ago, whether it was in trading, to the economy, to anything. And therefore, we need to skill ourselves so that we can actually compete. There is no other way for this country, and we have to skill ourselves. I go to presentations often on education. I go to presentations on health, and often we put all the great statistics that we have in these areas. It's not to take away from the achievements of health or education. It's not to take away. My comments may be critical, but it's not to take away from those achievements. But I must tell you, I am not satisfied. I think our health system has a long way to go in terms of quality of the health system. I always tell people, you say, it's not what we say about ourselves, it's what others say about us that really matter. If you do a patient survey in this country, and I'm not talking about the privileged classes of this country who have access to private health, I'm talking about 95% of the people who actually, when they have in-care health services, have to go into a government hospital. You do a survey among those people, and you'll then find out the truth about the quality of the health system, whether they're actually happy. Yes, of course, the indicators, the quantitative indicators are very high, and we are doing much better than our region. We are number one. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about quality and expectations of the population. Same thing goes for education. We saw this spend on provincial, we saw this spend on the central government there. Central government, 350 odd national schools. Provincial, nearly 9,500 schools in the provincial. Those numbers should be divided by that. You then get a picture of what the quality of the education in the provincial and in the rural areas of this country are. That's the real picture. And there's a lot to be done. It's to do with quality, not to do with the numbers in quantity, which we are doing better than the region, but it's to do with quality. Everyone needs a quality education. This is something for the National Human Rights Development Council, the long term and the short term. The long term, those of us in industry, we want the skills, we want the economic impact and the return. But I think a lot on the long term, there's a lot more to be done in preschool, in primary education, also in health, in expenditures on nutrition of the child, and so much to be done at the formative stages. So that's something that we need to look at, the government needs to look at. We need to invest in every student. It's not just about the share of the budget in education and health. Our government from 2015 has been increasing the spend on education and health, even as a portion of GDP. Not good enough, but at least there is a trend in that direction. This is the challenge we have. We are politicians. We are elected by the people. People look and say, what's the development around? Education, you can't see. Health, you can't see. But you build a bridge, you build a road, it is very, very visible. This is the challenge the politicians face. And we are often told, where is the development? I don't know if you are aware. Our government is building more highway capacity than the previous government did in their 10 years. More kilometers are being built by the present government than the previous government built. Matara to Hambantottora highway, a highway to Kandy, ring roads, and more kilometers than the previous regime built. I don't personally agree with that policy myself, but I'm just telling you the facts. I believe that rather than building those highways, whatever the electoral consequences are, that we should be putting some of those resources in human capital development, because that's where the future of the country should be. But these are the challenges of democracy, because this is what you keep hearing. Somebody said about political will. Ultimately, it's what the people want. And therefore, we have a job with the people to basically make the people aware that they are far better with their children having a quality education than having carpet laid in the road in front of their house. These are some of the choices that the country actually faces, and we need to tell people. Every student needs that opportunity. So it's not just a share of the budget. It's also about how it is equally distributed. Just think about it. Nearly 300,000 students sit the A-levels. 130,000 students qualify to go to university. 30,000 students at most enter the Sri Lankan university system. Is that a fair system? Look at the resources we put into the 30,000 students who ultimately end up a 3-year degree for 4.5 because they are on the street holding a board. Shouldn't we be taking the resources of the 30,000, dividing it by the 130,000? Isn't that a more fair system than just concentrating it on the 30,000? As the NHRDC report alluded to, and I haven't read the report, but from the presentation, right, then provide everyone else, all 130,000, with some state resources, and then provided them with debt so that all 130,000 could have a better education. These are things that we need to think about. This may be controversial, may not be very popular with some segments, but I think the truth needs to be spoken. We need to create a more equal society. Sometimes in the guise of equality, we are doing things which may not be very, very equal. So these are some of the things that at least there should be a debate. And I'm going to close on this. Education itself and skills itself will not solve all our problems. Because somebody said attitudes are important. And I completely agree with that. Ultimately, whatever education we have, we need to have an ethical education. We need to be able to distinguish between right and wrong, because educated thieves are far more dangerous than uneducated ones. And therefore, we need to create a system, right, which gives you ethical values so that you are able to make the right decisions. And therefore, I took the point about the funding of the NIE and the lack of money, and depending on grant money, the importance of teacher training, the importance of curricular development. You know, I'm complete agreement with those. And I think we need to put the money there, because ultimately education is not about infrastructure. It's about people, and it's about attitudes. Thank you again for inviting me to be here this morning. Thank you.
Noble words from the Honorable State Minister. And were you able to identify the grit in the pipeline, the obstructions, the gunk that gets in the way? Well, you have an idea now. Now the panel will form. So we would like to invite those that are indicated to be the ones in the panel to form. I think the Honorable Minister will be taking leave of us now, so we are grateful for his participation and for the words spoken and his kindly reminder with what we need to do in an emergency. That was also notably relevant. Mr. Jagat Pereira, President, Institute of Chartered Accountants, Sri Lanka, will be in the panel along with Director Planning, Ministry of Higher Education and Cultural Affairs, Mr. G.M.R.D. Aponso, Dr. Chandra Ambaldenia, the Council Member of NHRDC, Dr. Harsha Atrupana, Lead Economist with the World Bank. Then we too have from industry, the Chairman of DEMO, Mr. Ranjit Pandithage, the Secretary to the Ministry of Education, Mr. Sunil Hettiarachi. Then we have DG of EFC, Mr. Kanishka Veerasinghe. And moderating this discussion is Dinesh Veerakodi, Chairman, NHRDC, as well as the International Chamber of Commerce, ICC. So inasmuch as this is a panel discussion and our moderator will in time, I believe, elicit remarks from the audience, the idea is that you are meant to be part of the discussion, not remote.
Problems we have is employers complain that that the talent supply, we don't have enough people to support the development in the private sector. That's one challenge. And the type of people who are coming in are not properly skilled, right? Where do you think we need to start? Because so many options are being given and we have been doing so many things, still we have the same problem.
Well, I think look at there's a demand is there, the supply is also there. Now what goes wrong is we have not emphasized on proper dignity of labor plus where they could earn money. I would say that whenever, now I will take a good example, when we build our Mercedes-Benz Center, we had the contractor, with the contractor we negotiated how many engineers you have for air conditioning, for electric work, for construction work. We never asked them, have you got certified plumbers, whether you have got certified mason, whether you have got certified electrician. I think the insurance companies and also there should be something, people should be properly skilled to undertake work. So with that, the demand goes up. With the demand, the earning capacity also goes up. And end of the day, what happens today is the dignity of labor. I mean, the whole teledramas and everything shows if you are a carpenter or a plumber, you are a second-class citizen. As the High Commissioner of Australia said, I mean, that has to be changed. And that's how we took the initiative of developing our own skills, having our apprentice school for the last 29 years. And that also in the changing world, you have to build capacity where the demand except the industry needs. So today we are going into mechatronics, digital disruption, 3D and all these things have to come in. So this is not anything alien to a basunya or a plumber. They should, this is what we should demand.
Recently when the private sector met the Prime Minister, one of the suggestions that came was that the government actually should be giving the money to the private sector and hold them accountable for training their people. Do you support that view or?
Yes, there should be some sort of initiatives given now. I know that when we started, even Mercedes-Benz used to send us vehicles, right-hand, left-hand drive. We have to pay full duty for it. Some sort of support should come in. But we should be also in the private sector responsible enough to build capacity. We can't be always asking, you know, there's a big talk today about taxation. I mean, if you earn money, you have to pay taxes. That's a fundamental thing, that responsibility. You can't be always asking the government. But only thing the government should support us with the different things. You have to have even a basunya or a bricklayer must have some sort of qualification, and that should be insisted. So that then people will demand that, and then they can ask for that money that they have to ask for.
Okay. Sunil, I'll get to you now. I think Chandra, Dr. Ambaldenia came up with a chart. He outlined some numbers, and from the audience you actually challenged those numbers. Now close to 400 billion has been spent on education. When I say education, it's not only education, higher education, tertiary education, all that. But out of that, about 250 billion is taken by you. right? Tell us some of the new things that you are doing. I think one of the big issues we saw was the drop in school admissions, right? And then also what Ranjit suggested about changing the attitudes of kids also to understand what are the new skills and various things. What are you doing at the Education Ministry to change that?
Yes. Thank you, Dinesh. I think as the Secretary said that we have enough money. Money is not the issue. Issue is the system. System need to change under guidance of my Honorable Prime Minister and my Minister. Now we understood our responsibility.
Are you saying you have too much money or can you put it somewhere else? Or?
Enough money.
Enough. Okay.
Enough money. Funding is not the issue with that. The thing is our whole system, no? 76 years old our system. Now we gear up to changing. As mentioned, our role is to not to train the craftsman or something. It's up to the other sectors. My sector is lay down the foundation to match with the other sectors, you know, TV sector, higher education sector. So my area I am covering the general education. I had to make the full people, full student, full citizen. That's been match with the world demand, not only Sri Lanka demand. There are a lot of professional area. As Chandra mentioned that there are stuff, you know, we are intake is 3,20,000 per annum, the students take. The birth is through 3,40,000, less than 50,000. So some
I
are
didn't understand that. Say that again. I didn't
so
understand.
our intake is the grade 1,
Yeah.
3,20,000.
Okay.
It is remaining last few year, it will change. There are few private schools.
What is the actual demand? Is it 340 or?
No, 340 is birth, annual birth, but some are going abroad, some are going private school. That data is not coming our database. So our 3,20,000 is remaining with slight changes, so slight changes there. It is not my fault or our system fault, it's a demographic issue. No, so people are migrating, those things are happening. So that now we understood we have to listen to the industry, we have to listen to the market demand. So therefore we are changing our curriculum immediately. We work with the TV sector and higher education sector. So we are changing. Recently we introduced 13-year mandatory education. That means student, there is no failing, no dropouts. Every student has to be in the system until 19 years. 30 years in the school. We recently introduced 26 new syllabus in consultation with the TV sector, especially VTA and NITA. They help us to develop the new curriculum. We train the teachers, recently recruit the teachers, and we have collaborated with the industrial sector, hire the professional. We don't have enough teachers, some sectors, plumbing, we can't find the teacher. We have to work with the private sector. That things are happening. Dinesh, all these mentioned with the Chandra, everything is happening. He has mentioned our next focus is STEM education, STEM plus arts. That means we know the world is going that area. So I should ensure you, everyone, the government has enough money, we have enough authority and enough freedom to change the system. It's not easy. Most of there are private sector people and there are government sector, they know the system is not easy to change. As the Honorable Minister said, the attitude and ideology is still remaining in my system. So we need help from the industry, we need help from the entrepreneurs, so we can do our best.
What about career guidance? Now that is one area that I think the Education Ministry has not delivered properly.
Yes, career guidance system is in the school, but system we are not given that much of prominence. So you know, everyone know, parents and my teachers, my principal focus is the examination. No one listening for the career guidance. Now it is going to be happening in the system, the methodological way with the work with the NHRDC. Okay. So I'll assure you, 2019 end of the beginning of 2020 we will go establish the good system in consultation with the private sector.
Some time ago there was this criticism that you hired 2,000 career guidance teachers and they didn't know what career guidance was. Right? What have you done over the last 2 years to perhaps even upgrade these guys?
Now
if they give the wrong advice, you're screwing their future actually.
Yes, my teachers are not properly trained. Even my leaders, school principals, they are not market driven. Those gaps are there. We can't name only teachers.
Can't we work with the private sector and see whether we can perhaps help these guys to
Can
be reskilled?
It is happening now.
Okay.
So all these.
We
Yeah.
actually, German training school in
Okay.
Kilinochi, we train the people.
Yes.
But the problem there is, you see, you pay them about 25,000 rupees.
Yeah.
And a student who is learning from him, he knows
Yeah.
what is he going to earn after finish. That guy should be paid at least about 50,000, 100,000 rupees. So that he can commit the commitment.
Dr. Harsha, I turn to you. You have been doing a lot of research in ECD and education and all. I think over a period of maybe 10 years, have you seen a marginal improvement or an incremental improvement, or are there still a lot of issues that we need to address?
Sure, thank you, Dinesh. Yeah, if you look at the trend from any point in the past, there is an improvement. So even if you go back to 1948 when we got independence, and people talk about the decline of education since then, we don't see it in the statistics.
Okay.
So if you do see a significant improvement over a long period of time, and between any points in time between 1948 and now. I also think that over the last few years we have seen a lot of progress, particularly in higher education. We work closely with the Ministry of Higher Education and now Cultural Affairs. We've seen a lot of improvement in terms of expanding STEM enrollment in higher education, which was not really discussed during the presentation, but which was highlighted in some of the statistics. So that is a big achievement. We've also seen a lot of improvements in work in terms of promoting competition into improving teaching and learning, and also into improving research and innovation. So these are key areas of particularly a higher education system. We are also working closely with school education and early childhood development and vocational training and skills development. There are of course many challenges to come, but these again not unique to Sri Lanka. These are challenges that are faced across the world, including some of the top performers in the world education systems like Japan, Singapore and South Korea. So there's a long road to travel, and in a way a moving target, because an education system is always trying to help develop the human capital needed for a future which is to some extent unforeseeable. There are various things happening in research labs now which will change the nature of work that will affect the kinds of jobs that are done by 5-6-year-olds today or 3-4-year-olds, which we can't anticipate. So this is always a major challenge, but from the World Bank side we work closely with the government, including the Ministry of Education.
Okay. Now I'll turn to higher education. I think Dr. Chandra raised some very serious concerns that we are putting half our money into the social sciences like arts and all that. Is there a strategy actually to change that and to put more money behind engineering and accountancy and stuff like that?
Yeah, thanks. Actually, if we take last 8-year period, from 2010, we analyzed what are the issues in the sectors with all of the stakeholders. Finally, we concluded 4 policy issues. 3 are national level and one is subnational level policy issue. Then the first 3 are the demand supply issue for higher education. I think Dr. Ambulini also given some data. When we are talking about the middle income level country, access to higher education didn't reflect from we as a middle level country. I mean the measurement is gross enrollment ratio in higher education. We are maintaining that level at 17%, but in the middle income level countries maintaining it at 30 to 40 level. Then while students are demanding for higher education, then we need to focus that figure. At the same time, it should be matched with the job market. Right. Then we focus on the STEM. That is the one strategy when we are increasing the access. Then the question you actually asked whether we have focused on it or not. Actually, most number of, if you take the probability of student getting into the higher education, actually it is not art students. The higher possibility has the science students.
But
you take
the numbers don't
figures.
reflect that.
Yeah, if you take the composition, you are correct. What I am talking about, the chance to, because there are a lot of art students in the outside.
Okay.
But only 11% is coming to the sector.
Doctor, your presentation, you covered only the...
Yeah, actually what he's saying is actually the probability of a student getting into science is higher than a student getting into arts because of the large number of students. And if 1 out of 10 gets into arts, that means 10% probability. But if 2 students out of 5 students get into science, that is 40% probability.
Because the base is small.
Base is small.
So actually, no, my question is this: for the last 5 years, the private sector has been shouting that instead of putting money behind arts and all that, why don't you put it behind engineering and sciences?
No, you can't say like that because